In 2014, a study was done by these guys here that showed definitively that games like VALORANT and CSGO could improve your decision-making, attention to detail, visual attention, spatial awareness, and like a number of other things too. It just so happens that each of those things ended up on Epstein's list of top 10 things that you need to be a good parent. Games can be so much more than just wastes of time. They can teach you so many important things about history, philosophy, economics, how to become a millionaire, how to drive a car, how to pack your groceries better, and so many important things. But not every game is created equal. So that's why I've been using this scale in order to identify, well, what games can teach us something at all, and if that thing that the game can teach us is actually worth learning. So today I got Keo here with me to help me understand, well, if VALORANT can actually teach us anything, and if that's important, and well, can VALORANT actually teach us how to become a better parent? So let's get into it. Let's start with our goal, being a better parent. As I said before, we have this famous guy's list of top 10 things that make, well, skills that you need in order to be a good parent. So we're going to use that, and we're going to try to break it down a little bit. So stress management. This is how you handle stressful situations. You realize that these situations are often not only with your screaming baby, but you also have a relationship with your husband or wife, your parents, her parents, your siblings, and so many other things going on. These can be really stressful situations, so learning how to navigate those stressful situations, of course, will make you a better parent. Relationship skills. This is being able to work with people that you are in active conflict with. Now, you might not think that you're in conflict with your child, but your child might not always understand that what you're doing is actually good for them, and therefore you're kind of in conflict with them. So understanding how to work with somebody who is actively working against you, well, that's an important part of being a parent. And if we can learn that well, we might just be better parents. Prioritizing education and learning. If you can teach your child something important and just learning how to live life, then you're a successful parent, right? In order for you to be good at this though, you need to know what an educational situation looks like. So we need to find some way in order to be able to practice that so that we can identify those situations and then show our child what an educational situation looks like and then let them learn while they're in those situations. Ensuring your child's safety. This one is being able to kind of identify situations that might be precarious before they happen and then, well, kind of subtly shift it so that they're able to, well, not hurt themselves. This is obvious. If you're able to do this, you're probably going to be a better parent. You're just keeping your child alive, I guess. That's an important part of being a parent. Behavior management. This is learning how to, well, not just manage your own behavior, but also the child's behavior too. Maybe the child has done something wrong, right? Well, this is measuring your ability to actually be able to control the feelings that you have so that you don't just lash out with negative reinforcement, but also positive reinforcement at the same time. If you don't know how this connects to VALORANT yet, don't worry. We'll get to it. We'll get there. So if this study regarding VALORANT is true, if we can actually learn how to be a better parent and all these other things, why is VALORANT known for being such a toxic game? I mean, it's genuinely infamous for people crashing out and losing their minds when they hear a woman on the comms. That said, this is still one of the most conclusive studies that I found on the topic. This is the reason why I asked Keo to come help me understand this a little bit. VALORANT is a pretty complex game, and I suck at it. That's a little bit beside the point because, as I've said before, this is not a channel about impressive gaming feats. No, this is a channel for the everyman. This is the channel for the person who, well, thinks that if they could just queue up a few more times, if they just had a little bit more time, they would get better, but still queues up every night and maybe doesn't get anywhere, if you know what I'm saying. So what does a VALORANT pro have to say about VALORANT? We had a great long conversation about, well, pretty much every aspect of VALORANT, and we went over this rating scale in this study in pretty in depth. I wanted to get to the bottom of why there's a difference between what VALORANT can teach you and, well, what VALORANT feels like when we're playing it. And through our conversation, I realized that it really comes down to two major things that you can control. The first is mindset, and the second is actually wanting to win. Before we get into that, I do want to acknowledge something really important that I feel like is not mentioned in hardly any review out there at all. This game can effectively be two different games depending on your mindset when you queue up to play this game. I don't think that most people actually review the game based on this aspect. I think it's just kind of overlooked and ignored. But I think it's really important to recognize that this is the case. What I'm trying to say is that, well, maybe people don't actually take into account in a review the the subjective experience that being placed onto a particular team might have on the actual gaming experience. And it does, and I want to recognize that. But we're also going to just talk about things that we can control while we're playing Valorant, so I just want to acknowledge it and then kind of move on. If we queue up for a game with the mindset that we actually want to improve, then we find out that not only do we get better results, but we actually do improve ourselves, like while we're playing the game. We get better at the game. So with this in mind, how do we learn, well, stress management, the first thing that we were talking about? Well, I think the entire game is just one big experience and like how you're stressed and how you could potentially, I don't know, be less stressed. It's constantly throwing you into high pressure, high stress situations and seeing how you'd react. How do you react with the rest of your team when they're in a high pressure situation? How do you react when you're the one in a high pressure situation and somebody else isn't acting the way that you would act when you're in a high pressure situation? Learning how to do these things and learning how to come out on the other side and still win in a situation like that, that's something that you can actually learn in this game. And well, you could take that outside of the game as well. That's a really big piece of this. So what about relationship skills? This is where optimism comes in. Like I said before, you will come across people that aren't perfect, let's say, at their own temper management or stress management. And in those situations, we need to learn how to not only manage our own temper, but also manage theirs as well. We need to learn how to do that if you want to win. I know it's not the greatest thing, but like if you want to improve, if you want your ELO to go up, that's something that you need to do. So then therefore, how can we prioritize education? I know this one might seem a little interesting, but one of the most important things that you can ask yourself after every single round that you lose is, what could I have done better in order to come out on the other side, well, a victor? And by asking that question every single time, we are learning what situations will actually, well, give us a good response, like where did we actually learn something, and what situations we just didn't need to ask that question. We needed to just let go and forget about and move on. These are both important things, and learning these skills will help us be able to teach them to other people as well. So how can we learn to prioritize our child's safety while we're playing this game? Now, this one is really interesting, but this is one of the important parts of the study that we were looking at before. Visual attention. Visual attention is being able to see something, little small, minute details that happen in your vision or in your peripheral vision, being able to track things that are around you and be able to kind of identify them and then be able to identify them as threats, not threats, and being able to react to them quickly. And as you can imagine, this is something that you absolutely use as a parent, right? I mean, for example, you'd be able to watch your kid fall off of the couch or be able to get him in time. Stuff like that. Finally, how do we learn behavioral management? This, again, is completely dependent on the mindset that we go into each game when we queue up. This means managing expectations of your team, and being able to work with people that might not want to work with you. That also means that, like, when somebody does something wrong, you will never do the egregious sin of just running it down or stop playing and just griefing the rest of the game and the rest of your team, which happens, unfortunately, happens. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I believe that games can be way more than just wastes of time. They can teach you something really important about our lives, how we interact with the world, and so much more. But not every game is created equal, and that's why I've created this scale that I think is really good at extracting exactly what any game could teach us and then telling us if that thing that the game can teach us is actually worth learning. So the things that I'm taking into account for every review, they're problem solving, real life skills, empathy building, the message, and then finally, enjoyability, of course, because if the game wasn't enjoyable, we could just play an educational game, I guess. Each of these topics will contribute a weighted score to the overall score, and we can use that overall score to compare it to the other games that we've ranked in this category and see if this game can actually teach us something useful. This time, while this score will be a representation of what I think Valorant deserves on this scale, Q and I worked on this together, and so I defer to him in a lot of different cases, but there are some things that I think we kind of had a little bit of a variance on, and I'll point those out when we get there. If you want a full breakdown of this, check out my Patreon. The review there is free, but if you want to support me, that's a great place to do it. And of course, you can subscribe as well, because I've been making a lot of these videos. They're really fun, and learning about what we can learn while we're playing video games, like what more, I mean, there's a lot more to come, so check it out, yeah. With all that said, here's a quick breakdown of Valorant. Starting out with problem solving. This gets a 10 out of 10, and Keo agrees with this. This is 100% a 10 out of 10 Problem solving is the name of this game, is how can I outsmart my opponents on the map, on the battlefield? What can I do better? And it gives you the framework that you need in order to solve hard problems in your real life. Next up, we have real life skills, and this gets a 6 out of 10. And this is one of the areas that Q and I had a bit of a variance on. This is something that you can learn in the game.
So if you're going in with the mindset that like, I'm going to treat the other people on my team with, you know, respect and dignity and like they are real people.
So Keo gave this a 4 out of 10 because of that. But I want to point out that this study is pretty conclusive. You can learn these things while you're playing the game. It just depends on if you have the right mindset to actually learn these things. So there's two minds to it, right? If we go into this game thinking that we can actually learn this stuff, you will learn it. It will take a little bit of time, but you will learn it. If you don't go into this game thinking like this, you might not learn this just passively. And this can be kind of some hard things to actually bring into real life. Keo also brings exactly this up as well in the interview. Following that, we got empathy building, and this gets a 4 out of 10. This is another 4 out of 10 for Keo. Keo gave both this one and the last one a 4 out of 10, and I actually agree with him on this one. Empathy building is really hard skill to learn while you're playing a game like this, especially when you have people who are constantly berating you for decisions that they think are not right. It's really hard for people to imagine that they're the ones that actually need to improve, and it's much easier for them to just project onto somebody else, and that's often what happens. Additionally, it's also much harder to be pulled down than it is to pull somebody up out of a bad mood, attitude, all of that. And as a result, you could very easily find yourself in a place that's worse off than before in regards to how you treat other people. It really depends on how you go into this and if you're actually already prepared to do something like this in your real life. Next up is the message, and this surprisingly got a 7 out of 10. So this got a 7 out of 10 because it shows you a ladder and it's constantly begging the question, can you be on that ladder? It's giving you the skills and saying that, look, you are not any less than all of these other players that are queuing up with you. You could beat them. You could be at the top of the ladder if you just tried a little harder. And I think that that's an inspiring message, even if, well, you might not be able to, at the end of the day, actually climb. I think you understand what I'm meaning, and Keo definitely echoes this. He definitely thinks that his personal story, a lot of that was driven by just being able to see the ladder, being able to move up at it, and being able to actually do something and like land on the top 500 in the Radiant category. And to be able to do hard things like this is a great message that you can learn while you're playing this game. The message is only for those with ears to hear it. Of course, it's really easy to just queue up, forget about that, not really care, and just play. And so therefore, this score could go down a little bit, but it could also go up too. We're giving it a 7 out of 10 because I think it's a good middle ground for exactly what this can teach us. Finally, we have enjoyability, because what could a game be without enjoyability? I mean, again, we could just play some kind of math game. I don't know. We're not doing that. We're playing fun games, and we're rating them on what we can learn from them. Enjoyability, like this. I'll let Keo say it. Finally, enjoyability. Is it a fun game, or does it suck?
So like negative 400 probably would be good.
In a rating like this.
If everyone in the game played all the time trying, this game would be 10 out of 10. Enjoyability.
Right. I mean, Keo says it's best when he said that it could either be a 10 out of 10 or it could be a negative 400 out of 10. It really depends on the day. It really depends on your attitude. It really depends on the people that you get queued up with and the lobbies that you're playing in. All of that is not all on you in order to actually figure out. A lot of that is just, well, luck. Sometimes it's just luck, and there's nothing that you can do about that. And as a result, it has a huge variance. We're giving it full points just because of that. I mean, like, in a perfect world, it is a very good game. It is really fun, so I think it's worth the full points. But I just want to point out that this game can really ruin your day too. Like I said, it just depends. It just depends. So overall, Valorant gets a disappointing 5 out of 10 on this scale. And I actually think that it deserves this very much. Valorant can teach you a lot of important things. And I also want to say that I'm not trying to disprove any of the studies that any of these wonderful people have put their heart and souls into trying to figure out. Absolutely, you can learn something while you're playing Valorant. Is it something that you're guaranteed to learn while you're playing Valorant? Absolutely not. And that's what I want to get across. I think Keo, being a Valorant pro, he definitely understands that this is the case. There's a lot of people that don't take anything out of the game. And it's really up to you if you're actually going to learn something with it. So if we have the right mindset and you go into this game, this is a fantastic game to actually learn something from. But if you don't, you're not going to naturally learn it. And so as a result, it's getting a 5 out of 10. Again, this doesn't mean that it's a 5 out of 10 at like teaching you how to be a good parent. It can do that, but you have to have the right mindset for it. This video and this game was super fun for me to rate. I really loved it. Huge shout out to Kyo. Thank you for coming on and doing this little interview with me. If you want to see the full interview, you can check that out on my Patreon. That'll be up there for anybody who wants to see it. If you like this, I just released another video about how Tetris can teach you about spatial awareness and bagging your groceries. We did a full experiment. It was a lot of fun. If you're interested in this, check that one out too. I think that you'll really enjoy it. This has been Valorant Can Make You a Better Parent. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.